This is Saya.
This is Anisa.
And this is Paroma.
And today we're doing a special anniversary episode where we will basically talk about whatever comes to mind. But first we're going to tell our stories to each other and to you all of how we started watching Korean dramas in the first place. And then we'll just hang out for a bit. So thank you for sticking with us for a year. We really, really appreciate all your support and your listening to us yak for extremely long times.
Thank you.
Yes, we love you.
I wouldn't go that far. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
we like you anyway.
Tweet at us if you don't want to hear Sai anymore.
Are we going to do this every podcast?
Well, if you keep saying
No. Come on, like our listeners have already unanimously held that they do want to hear Saya, so yeah.
Yeah, but you should love them in return.
I'm cool with this. Tell me to be quiet. That's the only thing that will shut me up. But Anisa, I want to hear your story first because it's like the longest running
That's true.
type of thing.
Yeah, I think I watched my first Korean drama in 2009, so it's been almost 10 years. So I was in the thick of undergrad, and I also had insomnia for various health-related reasons, and I started reading, I remember I was reading the manga for Inuyasha, and then like I got into the manga for Hana Yori Dango, which is like the original Japanese manga for what eventually became like all the different adaptations of Boys Over Flowers. And I looked for an anime version because at that point I didn't know that there were like drama adaptations of comic books, which totally blew my mind. But so I was looking for the manga adaptation in anime. I didn't find one, or I couldn't find one that was actually like, with subtitles and not from 1995. So I found the live action Hana Yori Dango and I watched it and I loved it. I started watching Japanese dramas and then I watched so many that I like ran out of ones that were already subtitled and available to watch. And there used to be this website called My Soju back in the day. I don't know if you guys were around while My Soju was around, but it was pretty old school. It went down.
This is the age of fan subbers, basically. That's
it was during
the only way to get stuff was
exactly.
fan subs.
So it was hard to find subs, and obviously like people had to devote like a really long time to doing it. You had to like wait a week for the subs to come out. Basically, you young kids are so spoiled. You don't know how good you have it. No, I'm just kidding. So there was this one, like they had this ranking of the top 10 dramas every week, and it had been like 6 months, and the top number 1 drama was this Korean drama called The First Shop of Coffee Prince. I was like, what is this weird title? It looked so strange. It was like these bunch of dudes wearing vests, and I was in the picture and I was like, what is this? But it was the number 1 most popular one, so I ran out of shows to watch, so I clicked on it, and I've never been the same, basically. So I watched Coffee Prince, and
that was your gateway? Coffee Prince was your gateway?
That was my first Korean drama, yeah. And
I think that was my second Korean drama.
I think, and then I watched like, My Girl and Full House and all those, the really big ones, Gung.
Yeah, you were like, I really have to get into the 2000s Korean dramas.
And I was like, I had no way of judging what was good or not because I didn't know any other drama fans. So I just picked the ones that were like most highly rated and most popular on these websites. I started with those. So yeah, and I've been watching them ever since.
So what kept you watching? Like, why did you keep on watching after Coffee Prince? Do we even need to ask that question?
I mean, given who our listeners are, I don't think we really need to ask that question. But I think it was just, I really loved, like at this point, I was so done with American TV for so long. And then I liked the Japanese format a lot, which is why I continued watching those. And then the Korean drama format is similar, except it's just longer. So, like the Japanese format is 11 40-minute episodes, thereabouts, and Korean dramas tend to be like 16, 20, 1-hour episodes. And I just liked how you get a complete story, but it's not as short as a movie. You get to really go into the emotional and character development and the side characters' plots. And It's just a really great, I think, a really great encapsulation of a story, but you don't have to like have a cliffhanger at the end of the season and have them keep dragging out. Everyone like breaks up and gets back together with like everybody else in the cast, and it's just, you know, American TV. So yeah, that's why. Okay, who's next?
You want to go next?
Why don't you go next? I know your story, so I'm going to enjoy this.
I think I've already told my story on this podcast before, but
I don't think I've heard it, or not in detail anyway.
Well, you should actually already know why I got into Korean dramas. It's because of the third member of our podcast, Saya.
I mean, I knew it had something to do with Saya, but I want to hear the full version.
She dragged me into this world like kicking and screaming for 6 months. She was like, "You've got to watch, you're beautiful, you've got to watch it, and I was like, I will, sure, no,
go away, leave me alone.
Yeah. No, and I tried to I watched the first episode after she had recommended it, and just the first 10 minutes, and I was like, nope, I'm not watching this. I don't know what this is. This does not make any sense. This is clearly not meant for me. And I opted out. And then she was just so insistent.
Doesn't that episode have the vomiting into the other person's mouth
at
part?
The very end.
Okay. I was going to say, it's not really the
and
most
that's not really a hook
drama.
either way. Like, you know.
No,
it's not like, oh my god, that's a great scene. I have to watch this from.
Oh, was that your reaction?
No, the inherent problem with K-dramas is that their first episodes are not strong. Like, you have to hang in there.
That's always been like the biggest hurdle for me, trying to get other people to watch K-dramas. I'm always like, just get through the first episode. Just
no one wants to put in 4 hours before it gets good. They want it to be good in the first 10 minutes, and it's like, I cannot think of more. I actually, off the top of my head right now, I can't think of any. But I think there are like 2 or 3 that are good.
Prince has a good first episode.
But I think Korean dramas have evolved that way. Like in the recent years, especially the last 2 years, the first episodes have become episodes that you can, like, they're definitive episodes. You can tell by the end of the first episode whether the rest of the drama would work out. And often the first few episodes are better than the rest of the drama. That's not how it used to be. They would just put so much exposition into the first few episodes that it was almost boring. It was a slog to get through. But now the first few episodes tend to be pretty dynamic.
Do you think that depends on the genre as well?
I think
maybe.
I think that's true.
Yeah, I watched mostly like fantasy or just or rom-com, and those are pretty fast-paced genres. So.
Especially like with fantasy and rom-com, there's so much magic in the setup. And the meet cute and the characters meeting each other.
World building.
Fantasy, world building, and then like the non-supernatural character meeting the supernatural character. So like that makes the beginning really exciting, and the latter half not as maybe. Yeah. Whereas with things like family dramas, the beginning you're just like, oh my god, so many characters, and you're like getting to know everybody, and then by the end you get this like really great payoff of like all the relationships, and it's like, it's really satisfying. So the end tends to be more satisfying, in my opinion.
Yeah, possible, true. But yeah, so that's how and then I think 6 months later, she kept on talking. Well, she was really sad, and she wanted me to watch, I think, Prince's Man after that, and also Queen Infant's Man. And I'm like, okay, if she's going to keep on loving these historical type dramas at me, I would better just watch something contemporary first. And yeah, I got through the first. I think by the end of the first episode, I was hooked, because they had Hwang Tae-kyung come in, and Hwang Tae-kyung was just so weird. He was just not something I was familiar with. Male heroes did not look or act like him, and I was completely. But the dress thing didn't even. It's just the way he was such a grouch. And he was also really skinny. This was like a culture shock for me.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the male lead.
We're used to the skinny boys now, but it's true. It's in the beginning, you're like, wow, it's so skinny for a male lead.
And it was these, and also I hadn't watched anything with, that was based in the, like the music industry. I never actually watched anything in that industry, so the concept was pretty new as well. And they were somehow bringing this novice from an abbey into the world of music. And that concept was pretty amazing. So yeah. And also Park Shin Hye, she was just too adorable.
She was really cute in that.
Park Shin Hye in boy garb was like the cutest thing. She was just such a she's the kind of heroine that you want to like protect. Like you want to wrap her up in like really, I don't know, thick what do you call those things? Yeah, maybe. And just protect her. And then
because she was so dumb.
She was not dumb. She was just so naive.
I guess.
At no point did I ever think that she was dumb, and that was also refreshing. Because I had my share of heroines who are presented as badass but are in reality super dumb. I've had my share of those kind of heroines in other movie and TV industries around the world. But this girl, she is resourceful. She is not independent, but trying to become so. And also, she has a mind of her own. She had all of those things, but she was especially naive. And then it was just by the end of You're Beautiful, what I loved the most about this drama, aside from everything to do with Hwang Tae-kyung, was how Park Shin-hye's character went from naive and thick-headed to, I don't know, wiser, and still willing to give the world a chance, and just as stubborn as ever and more self-assured. She had this proper arc, and yeah, I fell in love with K-dramas after that.
I mean, she had a reason for being so naive. It wasn't just like, I lived to this day in the regular world, but I still don't understand
she was literally in a convent. She was literally raised in a convent. That's what people say when, someone's like super naive. Like, were you raised in a convent? Yeah, that this character really was. So yeah, I loved everything about that drama, including the animation clouds following around buck naked men.
Oh, it was so funny. That drama was so funny. I think I remember it more for the humor than for the romance.
Yeah, and
was so great.
that was great. And then of course I watched Coffee Prince, and that was the tone and style of that drama was very different from You're Beautiful, which was super popcorn. And while Coffee Prince was also, of course, romantic comedy, there was also there was more grit and more realism to the camera work, to the way the people talk to each other, the language used, the dialogue, the setup, like where people lived. It wasn't just this fancy like, how some dramas have poor people living in like really nice houses. That's not how they were doing this drama. So I love the stylistic change, and that was my second drama. And the third one was Queen In Hun's Man. By the time I was watching Queen In Hun's Man, I was a goner. There was this a solid period of 1 year where I watched nothing but K-dramas. I was like, I have so much to catch up to. So yeah, that happened.
I still feel like that 9 years later. And I still have so much to catch up to.
Yeah.
Laica, you want to tell us your story?
My story is really boring.
Oh, come on.
I have faith in you to tell it in an entertaining way, even if it is boring. Go.
Well, I'll start with being born, and then anyway.
All right, let's settle in. Let me get another cup of coffee.
No, so basically, my life is a series of addictions. Because this happens when you have like addictive personality issues. So kind of like you, I spent many years in anime, manga, and books, just a lot of books, like endless books, and also American, Western English language dramas. And my sister had been at me. This is always about my sister. My sister introduces me to everything that is bad for me, but I love.
Younger sister or older sister?
I don't have any older sisters, just younger
Okay,
sister.
you're the oldest.
So I later heard from them that the both of them had been watching Korean dramas from like well before me, and they decided between themselves that they couldn't introduce me to save me from myself because they knew what would happen if they did. So it was like they know me a little too well. They were right because within a year of starting watching K-drama, I'd started learning Korean. Within the next year, I'd begun writing for Drama Beans. Within the year after that, I had begun working for Vicky, and the year after that, podcast. And so I'm just wondering what the next year is going to bring. Like, there's nothing, I don't have any time left. There's nothing I can do. How much further can I go with this?
Time to move to Korea.
Oh, if my life were less complicated, that would.
Yeah. You could be like me and start grad school and take Korean as part of your major. Because that's where I'm at right now. I just started.
Oh, I wish I could. I do still take classes. I need to cough. Hold on.
Wow, my dedication to Korean is way less than you guys.
I literally had my language test today. I went and talked to the prof, and she like asked me all these questions, and I had to answer her in Korean about myself, and I took a.
Oh, do you know I completely
test.
freeze up? Like my spoken Korean is the actual worst. Like in my head it's perfect, but somewhere between the sort of brain mouth interface it all gets lost, and you're like, oh, I hate it so much. I know exactly what I want to say and how to say it, but at the point of having to speak it, it's just like.
I'm fine in a class setting, but then if I'm like out somewhere, like at the H Mart or at a restaurant or something, I feel so awkward, and I always end up speaking English because I'm like, oh, they're gonna give me weird looks. And
I've had this really hilarious reaction when I've gone to H Mart and I've like practicing my Korean. Like I'm speaking Korean and it's like it's fine, my accent is good and everything. But like the ajushi I'm talking to or whatever, he'll be looking around trying to see where the Korean is coming from. And you're like, I'm literally in front of you, and he's still looking around until I switch to English, and then he notices me. So it's like interesting. It's like it's just not like at all. The
possible.
idea compute of this person who looks like this speaking Korean is just she's not Korean. There's no possibility that it's gonna that stuff's coming out of her mouth. It was really
also
hilarious.
that's funny. I think it's also because we speak other languages, so we're able to pronounce it closer to how it's actually supposed to be pronounced, whereas a lot of people who like if you only speak English, your pronunciation is going to sound like someone who's speaking it as a second language, like very obviously. So I'm not saying that my pronunciation is that good, but I'm just saying like sometimes it's just even more like unexpected because they're like, wait, what? You?
they see that face or that the particular way you present yourself and very clearly not Korean.
Yeah.
So you have certain expectations when you see certain things. So it's like it's not in their repertoire of expectations that this language would be coming out of that mouth. It's really funny.
Yeah. I remember I had a Korean classmate in my undergrad, and I think we were taking comparative history or something together, and I told her I was studying it just on my own, and she was like, but why? She's like, why would you study Korean? It's so useless. I was like, isn't that where you're from? She's like, yeah, I mean, it's my language, but I mean, why would you study it? I was like, okay. That was funny.
Your friends behind the curve then, because Korean's like quickly picking up pace as an international language.
Well, this was like 6 years ago, so things have changed a little bit. Yeah, it was before BTS won the Billboard Awards, all that stuff.
Yeah, that would make a difference.
I still get a lot of raised eyebrows. I mean, I don't tell a lot of people about my sort of extracurriculars, but it just comes up in conversation sometimes. I'm taking Korean classes, and people are like, Korean? That's weird. Why? And of course, I'm not about to admit the whole, K-drama part of it. So it's kind of like, oh, I just like languages, and it's like, cool. And they're just like very skeptical about it.
Yeah, no, you just still do get people kind of taken aback because it's not the most common foreign language to study around here either.
What's most funny is when like you're talking to someone about something Korean, like I don't know, skincare or learning the language or something, and then they like secretly admit that they watch K-dramas, and you're like, low five.
Yeah, you had to vet people and find out what their angle is, and then if they like you're like, hey.
Although I've also found it sometimes it's a bit embarrassing to admit that the reason that you learn Korean is merely K dramas, because like for example in my classes I have there's one guy whose wife is Korean, there's another person who's like on placement who's going on placement in Korea, and you have stuff like that, like serious life reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I like K drama. And then it's like, yeah.
I feel like it's a better reason than K-pop at least.
But then you can't even be snooty about it.
No, you can't.
And I'm not.
It's like right next to K-pop, but like slightly more serious.
Yeah, see, my class is split between like a small handful of serious life reason Korean learners and K-pop, and then you have like the solitary, sad drama fan in the middle, me, and you're like, I have nobody to talk to about dramas in my class.
Yeah, when I tell the professors that that's how I first got into Korean, they just laugh.
Yeah, because I think among sort of non-drama watchers, there's like the way you think of people who just spend all their time watching TV. Because most people are kind of busy, like living serious lives. If you think of it in the same way as just normal English-speaking people watching English language TV, and if they're like, oh yeah, I spend all my time watching American dramas, and you'd be like, okay, don't you do anything else with your life?
Although
So
I think
feel like we
at
get
least
that
over here, binge watching TV has kind of become everyone's like stress relief activity of choice. So I don't think people really judge you for watching TV, because I think something like 1 in 3 households in the US has Netflix. So like I feel like TV has kind of come back, except everyone's watching it on streaming. So they just like go home on the weekend and like binge watch a show, and that's how they kind of relax from their work week,
Shall I go back to my actual story
Yes.
though?
Yes. You didn't tell us which drama you started with.
So it was like August 2012 or something. And my sister finally sat me down in her room. She was like, "You're watching this with me. I don't care." And it was You're Beautiful. And I wasn't sold. I wasn't sold on the first episode. I was like, "What is this?" And especially that ending. It's like she vomited in his mouth. Are you serious? You want me to watch this? And then she sat me down for 10 episodes, and I watched them, getting more and more into it. And then by like 11, which is I think when like the confession and the romancy proper bits, she was like, go and watch this by yourself now. I was like, okay then.
My job here is done.
I know, right? And at that point I was still asking her for recommendations, and like I would discover a friend of a friend had watched a couple. Like I think that friend had literally watched 2, and she recommended me Coffee Prince and Answer Me 97. So they were the only 2 dramas she'd watched. I was like, okay then, I'll watch those too. What was my second drama? My second drama was Queen and Kinsman, actually. So I had some really good starter dramas. And yeah, I did spend 6 months. I was really surprised to discover that it was 6 months non-stop trying to get Pete to watch this stuff. I think the reason that You're Beautiful really caught me is that it was like a time of life where like things were a little bit emotionally difficult for me, with a lot of stuff, and it really all the conflicts in it really spoke to me. The characters really spoke to me, and it was exactly what I needed at that point in my life. I think I spent a solid 3 months just rewatching it over and over. I think that's the only drama I've watched back to back like 3 times over.
Oh wow. Yeah, I think for me as well, I was in such a difficult time of my life when I first started watching Korean dramas. Like it was kind of therapy for me. Like I couldn't, like I was going through such a difficult time that I couldn't even cry. But I was able to cry when Gon-chan was like, couldn't tell Hankul that she was a girl, and it was killing her, and I was like sobbing my heart out, and I was like, oh, this is therapeutic, you know? So, and I think I was lucky in the sense that because I was totally alone, I didn't know that anyone else in my life would ever be watching this weird thing that I found on the internet. So like, I didn't have, you know, K-drama watching buddies. It was just me. I was living by myself at that time. I hadn't even gotten my pet yet. So I was very alone. I was in a different country than my family. I was going through school and dealing with some like really difficult personal health stuff. So like, it was really nice to just, you know, because K-drama takes you on this emotional journey that's kind of unlike anything else, I think. And that emotional journey was really something that it helped me a lot. It really helped me through that time. So
I felt because with, like, for example, Japanese language stuff, whether it was not so much live action, it was mostly anime. I had a slight aversion to live action because of that. It's like, I don't want to watch real people. I like animation. So it was a weird kind of mental jump from anime to live action Korean. And I remember saying to my sister, like, what if I don't like how the language sounds? Because I liked how Japanese sounded, whatever. I liked how Japanese sounded. But the thing with Korean is that structurally and like in its sounds, it's so similar to like subcontinent language, and it's really similar to Bengali. In it, like, not necessarily obviously. I mean, actually, even some of the vocab, you're like,
yeah,
these are the same words. So you're listening to it, and I remember within the first couple of episodes that the grammar of the language was beginning to resolve to me in a way that like years of Japanese had not.
Wow.
And like the more I listened to it, the more I could, like, there's a reason why I had never gone on to learn Japanese and that I immediately went and tried to learn Korean. And there's like this feeling, and I think I say this to anyone who asks me, but there was this really strange feeling of homecoming. Like, this was what I had been looking for my whole life. This is a place that I felt completely at home in, and I didn't realize how much I was what I was missing from the English language TV I had been watching until then. Because what was my last great obsession before I discovered K-dramas was Gilmore Girls, and before that it was Merlin. And I'd kept on watching things to find that feeling. And I know, like, at this point in my life, I can't even. Gilmore Girls is like, there's so much wrong with it. But at that time, so much wrong with it. At that time, though, it was like it had all of those. What was it, like, the kind of the slice of life, emotional realism. Well, at that time, and it had all of these elements that just were not common in normal.
Yeah, it was funny. It was heartwarming. It was focused on women's relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, what did I watch? I think I went on after that. I watched stuff like Veronica Mars, and I just kept going through shows trying to find that feeling, and I didn't find it until K-drama. And it's something that K-drama uniformly offers. It's not like it's something really specific and special to K-dramas that isn't. You know, you can find this across the spectrum of K-dramas.
The funny thing is that I was watching pretty much the same shows around the same time: Veronica Mars, Merlin, and what was the other one?
Gilmore Girls.
Gilmore Girls, yeah. So those, and I think it was because of Merlin that we started this email string. We were listening to the commentaries, and I think a radio show that the actors had done.
There was a radio play that Colin Morgan did. I'm still a Colin Morgan expert.
Exactly. So we even named our email thread after that, I think, Crybabies.
Oh, the thing is, you guys, so we have this secret special email thread with the three of us.
Secret special people.
Yeah.
friends.
But it had originally begun because, like, you guys didn't know each other, but I knew all of you, and I knew you liked Merlin. So I sent you this link to a Colin Morgan radio play called Crybabies, and that was the name of the email thread.
And this is why it's crazy. See, I joined much later, so I had no idea about all of this. I've never seen Merlin. I'm one of those late coming.
Our babies is now what, 6, 7 years old?
It's like 8 years old or something. It's super
Oh
old.
my god!
Because I remember I was moving house at that. Oh no, maybe it wasn't then. Maybe it was a bit later than that. Yeah.
But at that time, I was watching much of the same stuff and looking for much of the same things in my drama, which is probably why you hounded me for so long to watch K-dramas.
Yeah, because I knew you would love it. I was like, I know she's going to like this. What's wrong with her? Why doesn't she listen to me?
I suppose I didn't trust you, Saya. I do now.
Betrayal. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's like when P tries to make me watch stuff, and I'm like, but I don't know if I'm gonna like it. I don't know if I'm gonna like it. I don't know if I'm gonna like it.
And
then the other person's like, I know you better than you know yourself.
Right. Like, there was Faith that P told me to watch, and I was like, but everyone's like really dissed this show, so clearly I'm not gonna enjoy it. And of course, it was like Faith. I was like,
God, that was my cat name for a while.
Yeah. And then there was the recent one, Miss Temper and Namjingi. And yeah, I totally watched it after I told you I wasn't going to.
I still need to watch that. I haven't watched that yet.
It's for our listeners, a feature that we didn't end up doing. It was called Convince Me to Watch. So Paroma was convincing me to watch Miss Temper, and I was like, yeah, I'm not sold.
And then, why wouldn't you want to watch that?
For me, it's not that I'm not sold. I'm just like adding it to my list of like 80 million things that I want to watch, and I just don't know when I'm gonna ever get to it. And then like new stuff keeps coming out, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is so good." I'm like, "Oh God, the stress, the FOMO. I just can't."
I think my real failure with what I wanted to get P to watch was Princesses Man. And now I'm not going to push it anymore for obvious reasons. Yeah. But you missed out, P.
I missed out on that one too. I think I watched a little bit of the first episode, and then I just never ended up watching it. And now
I watched the first 10 episodes of Princesses Man. I just never got into it. Yeah,
I have to say, by about 12, if you're not into it, you can drop it. But it does, I think, strangely, it does take until about 12.
That's too long. I'm sorry.
But it is worth it. Like, it's so worth it.
I mean, I'm willing to watch it for like 2 episodes per episode, but 12 is a little bit.
Even 6 episodes I'm willing to give, 8 maximum, but like, I mean, come on. And the thing is that
you gave it a fair shot if it was 10.
But you know what? There is a little a glaring distinction between what we like to watch, Saya. I am not as much into revenge mellow as you are, and Princess Man does get into revenge mellow territory.
I have never seen it as a revenge mellow, never. To me, it's just like Suguk.
But even the premise...
Suguk is all a single genre.
But I mean, I've read the premise. The premise is literally a revenge story.
I know, but I've never watched it that way, which is kind of, that's weird. I've never watched it. I've never even thought of it that way, like literally not once.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it had that whole Montag and Capulet thing going on, and it just it had that whole
Romeo and Juliet is my least favorite trope.
Yeah, not my favorite. I did go on and read the recaps later on to figure out if I had missed something, and it's okay. I think I could live without watching that.
If it's not your thing, it's not your thing.
Yeah. But you know what, like before getting into K-dramas, there was a period of few years where I was searching out every single period drama, especially BBC period dramas that I could find, like all the.
I love BBC period drama.
That's how I always describe K-drama to people. It's like BBC
exactly.
drama,
the transition was easier. Yeah. Like it's not so much that it was easy. It's like that is what I was looking for.
Yeah,
I wanted
exactly.
slow pacing with emotional development happening, and then there is this restraint between people, especially restraint in romantic situations that you just don't have in contemporary anything, even contemporary Indian romance. romances.
build
So
up. Because it's like
exactly.
that's something that you can take so much time over and put so much into.
The
And
longing glances from across
yeah,
the
Yeah,
room, and
but
yeah,
it's not just the main character. It's not just the romance between the protagonists. Usually the romance is just one part of the entire world of that drama or that movie. There are so many other characters, and they contribute to the main relationship.
and
And
it's
and it just all of that together makes up the story. It's not just this isolated romance, which is what most of the and mind you, I grew up devouring Western romantic dramas like TV shows and movies. So it's not like
like
I didn't
Disney
love them.
Channel
I loved
original
them.
movies.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
like
think
all
I've
of them.
watched everything out there. Like every early 2000s rom-com, literally everything, and all of them. And like a
I
month into
agree.
watching
As
Okay,
soon as
guys.
we got like internet in my house, there was like no romance comedy was safe in the world. I was looking for more romance that are slower paced and that just where the relationships develop, where the end game is not the characters kissing. The end game is getting to a place with their relationship that is positive and hopeful, and also just a lot of other things that I was not getting from the Western movies and TV shows that I
I
was
think
watching.
people have changed.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
and also
exactly.
like
No problem.
no, I was gonna say there another thing that is with the BBC period dramas and Korean dramas is that it's not just about like a comedy. When you talk about comedies in the classical sense, it's the happy ending at the end, right? But the thing about romantic comedies is it's not just about the happy ending between the two people, but it's like reaching that place of equilibrium where like you're okay with your family relationships, you're okay with your work kind of setup, you're okay with your living situation, and it doesn't mean that everything is wrapped up in a little bow and it's all tidy, but it's like the whole cast and the whole like all the relationships, like the parental relationships and the sibling relationships, you kind of have come to this point in the development where everybody's kind of transformed from where they
And
were
that
before
Yeah.
to a new place.
that includes the villains as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So whether they get redemption or whether they become sympathetic or whether they are punished, all of those things, like they have a full arc.
Right. There's a journey, and it's not just a journey for one person. It's a journey that everybody kind of takes together, either parallel or by meeting each other, and changing each other. So that's really
Yeah, I feel compelled to point out here that this is also one of the reasons I really loved romance novels, and again, mostly historical romance novels, because the best ones were never just about the main couple. It was always about their entire life, like their work life, their relationship with their families, their ambitions, their fears, all of those things, and also the love that they are discovering and their capacity to have a relationship. It just that translates really well through Korean dramas.
Right, and that's why it works so well. I think like why K-dramas appeal so much to people who are actually readers. Um, because somehow the experience of watching a K-drama is a lot like reading a book, and not just like nothing to do with subtitles,
so
but
true.
the sort of the emotional experience, the whole journey that you go through watching that drama is very much like reading a book in the depth of its emotions, and just how the time that it takes over its moments and things like that. And actually talking about BBC dramas just a couple of minutes ago, and that's why I'm so excited to see BBC like remakes of BBC dramas. But so far they're only doing thrillers, and I really really want them to do the period dramas, stuff like like classics like Pride and Prejudice. Like I really want to see what a K-drama would do with Jane Austen. I really 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 want to see that.
Yeah, but I do think that the same thing that we love about the romantic comedies in Korean drama also happens in thrillers or in those, the crime procedurals that Korean dramas also do
Yeah,
really
yeah, you're
well.
absolutely right. It
It's
does.
my favorite till now has been Police Unit 38. Just the relationships there, the con jobs themselves, the arc of the individual characters, it just explodes so well. It's not like one of the reasons I could never get into Korean movies, right, like some of them are really great. Like that one with the Police Academy. What was it
They're
called?
not long enough. Midnight Runners.
Midnight Runners. I love
I still need
Midnight
to watch
Runners.
that. I need to watch that.
Watch it immediately. You'll love it.
There are some Korean movies which are just brilliant, but in general, Korean movies are they aren't long enough, and they are really just flashy. They try to get you pumped up in the moment, and then it ends. There is no exploration of character and
Like, you
themes.
don't have time to get emotionally attached to anything.
No,
And
but
actually,
they also make you realize exactly why Korean dramas resonate with us so much. What's missing in the movies is what we love so much about the dramas. And now
Yeah.
this would not be true if these dramas were like, I don't know, 200, 300 episodes, which often happens with soap operas in my country. And I know there are Korean soap operas which are also unending, but just the drama format of 16 episodes, 20 episodes, it just perfect.
The full meal.
Yeah, the prime time
The full meal.
miniseries. Yeah, the twice a week. I think another thing that's really interesting to me, which really overlaps with things like Jane Austen and historical romances and like BBC period dramas is, and I mean, there's something to be analyzed, and maybe this is not the best thing, but the heroine's romantic life and what kind of class she's born into and what kind of class she aspires to and her economic situation are so tied together. And I feel like that's really true in Korean dramas as well. But there's so much more of an exploration of that, I feel, in Korean dramas, where, especially in recent years, it's not just a flat out Cinderella narrative. It's like, there's variations on it, and there's a little bit of a deconstruction of that. So I think that's really interesting.
Right, because the other thing, for me, and I don't know if this is true for you as well, is that this is something that we completely never ever get from Western dramas, is that when you're watching a K-drama, there's that whole aspect of Eastern culture, of Asian culture, which forms a part of the narrative, as in you have parental obligations, for example. There's things like filial piety, which matters in our cultures. But like, I remember as a kid, watching TV, just children's TV, like ordinary BBC daytime kids TV. And this is what was like the Queen's News. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's a really classic kids show in the UK. And I remember the main character in that was yelling at her mum. Anytime something like that came on TV, we had to turn it off. We were not allowed to watch that because you don't disrespect your parents like that. You don't shout at your parents.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to watch stuff like that either.
Yeah. So like, there's this like the values are different, and I feel like the values of K-dramas align much more closely with the values of uh, Asian diaspora as well as sort of native Asian people, because like, we have this culture in our households, even if it's not in our wider communities.
Yeah, and even
like,
though
you
there are
feel like K-drama understands you. Like you're watching.
And there might be differences that are specific to every culture, but then there's this broad underlying kind of sensibility.
Commonality.
Yeah, it is, like keeping the family together is really important in our cultures. It's not something that's optional, like it's something that's really important to your life and your emotional life and your, for sure.
And like, for like, when we were watching Pretty Nuna a few months ago, there were like, I felt like I was able to understand those characters more closely to what they were as an Asian than, like, we were getting a lot of comments where people saying, why doesn't she just leave? Why doesn't what's her name, Sonia Jin, why didn't she just leave her parents' house? And that's a fair comment to make, but that disregards the entire context of this the culture of you don't just leave your parents' house. It doesn't work that way.
I mean, that's true, although Pretty Nuna had some writing problems.
Yeah, no, it had a lot of problems. It's just the first example that came to mind.
Yeah,
but
no,
like, in terms of sort of unspoken norms that you've seen,
or like dramas where the main character wants to marry somebody, but their parents don't approve. And
Right.
people are like, why don't they just get married? Like, who cares what their
Like
parents
you
say?
don't need your parents' approval. And I
Yeah,
have to say,
I mean-
I've thought those things as well. It's not that I don't think them, I
Yeah.
do. But I understand.
Yeah.
Like I feel like because we have those conflicts as well. Like those are the conflicts that are they're the problems and challenges of our lives too. You know, that balance between the how to, you know, maintain your agency and power as a younger person against elders, when, you know, you want to have your own space but you are still bound by these sort of familial obligations, and there's all sorts of stuff going along there which you really get.
And
So
also kind of, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like when you watch when I watch that in a K-drama, I feel like the drama understands me, not that I understand the drama.
You don't have to leave your own, because as a minority growing up in a majority culture where everyone else, most people that you are around all day don't look like you, they don't have the same, you know, cultural background as you, like you kind of get used to always fitting yourself into a space where you are relating to everyone else. And as a person of color who's growing up watching basically white people on TV and in movies, you're always the one that's relating to them, and you can relate to them. And we've spent our whole lives relating to them, and it's fine because we're all human beings. We can relate to each other. But it's so nice to not have to leave your own space.
And to have it come into yours.
And it'd be like, I get you. I know what you feel. Like it's nice not to have to make that effort, you know?
Because it is like you don't realize until you stop doing it how much of an effort it is. Because now, I mean, basically all like these past few years, it's not just K-drama, it's also sort of just understanding life better. That's why I can't go back to something like Gilmore Girls, because it's like I can see all of the problems, and it's why when I watch a show now, like a sort of a Western type of show, if, for example, the cast is all white, I notice that. If, you know, the people of color, the POC characters are like the sidekick or they're stereotypes or things like that, again, you notice those things.
And it's also like it's so much more of a reflection of your own life that you're not, I mean, I didn't notice it growing up that much, or at least not consciously, but now I'm not really willing to give shows a pass in the same way I was before. Whereas if it's from like another culture in another country, like I don't have to judge them for their representation, you know. Whereas if it's an American show, I'm like, look, we have other people in our country that
because you're an insider.
Exactly.
Like, when you watch that American show, you're still an insider, so you can be critical of it. Whereas when it comes to, for example, something like K-drama, you're like, well, I do recognize and I do feel and I know that I'm an outsider to this, so those are not my problems. I am not, like, there isn't an avatar of me in this show, whereas there is in the others, or there's an absence of it in the others.
Right. You don't feel the absence because it's not like being excluded from your home, you know?
Right.
It's like being a guest in somebody else's home and being like, oh my gosh, we have so much in common, and you feel so welcome. Whereas if it's a picture of your own home and there's like no one who looks like you. Like, oh, this tells me something.
Yeah.
So, Paroma, are you still there? Sorry.
Sorry. It's just such a big deal, this whole experience.
It is. Have you guys ever considered that there is this dearth of human stories in not Western TV shows, not the movies. The movies are more diverse in some ways. But in television storytelling, there seems to be this, starved for human relationships. The ones that we usually see there are relationships we have seen before. We know how it goes down. But somehow, when Korean dramas do human relationships, they just seem to bring out new facets, new conflict, between people that we may not have heard of or thought of before. But for instance, we like right now I'm watching 30 but 17, and we all have, like, some of us really have issues with this girl who's just 17 inside, falling for this 30-year-old man, and that man looking at her as a woman. Like there are issues there, but the entire time I'm watching this drama, which is otherwise
It's working
heartwarming,
for
I
you.
keep thinking it's not that it's working for me. I like there was a scene, I think, in episode 17, 18, where they um uh, where this woman who's 30 years old, she tells our heroine Suri that you think I'm an adult, but I still feel like I'm like a 20-year-old. And this is true for me. I'm going to be 30 soon, and in my head I have never gotten beyond my 20s. I haven't even gotten into my 20s. I don't know what adulthood is
trust
like.
me. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this
That's
is what
so real.
Hisu was
I'm
saying.
just stuck. Like the high schooler me, in some ways had gained but all the maturity that I was ever going to gain. After that, I think I'm just living and pretending that I'm all adult. And if someone looks at me and asks me questions, and
Right?
I'm all authoritative about how I
Yeah,
answer
like
it, but that doesn't
I
actually
feel
mean I
like I
know
was my
anything.
most mature at like 17 or 18, and
I
I've got
completely agree.
steadily
That is true for me
less
too.
mature since.
I genuinely think my 18-year-old self would judge me right now. Like, she would be like, I thought you would be smarter.
But my 18-year-old
But
self was also really judgy.
I was gonna say, I
right,
think we are so idealistic, we're so judgmental, we have such high expectations of everyone. And then life happens and you're like, wow, life is really unforgiving and tough. And you
so
become
yeah, so
slightly
from that perspective, I'll just finish with this point. So from that perspective, this drama makes me think of that it's true. It doesn't matter that I'm going to be turning 30 soon. It doesn't matter because in my head I'm still 17, 18 years old. I find teenagers super annoying at this point because some of the stuff they say are just, well, they're stupid. But
yeah.
I don't think
Don't
I
alienate our
have
teen
much on
listeners,
them.
Paroma.
I'm sorry,
We love
teenagers,
you.
if you're listening to us, we Ajumas
We
are
are you.
definitely you.
Oh my god. Speaking of teenagers and also 30 but 17, I am in shock. Chan is the same guy as the soccer player from Father is Strange. I am in shock. I did not recognize
Seriously?
him.
Well, I did not recognize him either. You're right.
It's the
I'm
same
just
actor. I found this out a few days ago and I was like, what? Also because he can act now.
he can act now. And my God, look, Chan is he's an incredible teenager, which is why I there's just no way that boy is 17. How is he so honest, hardworking, sensitive, caring? It's impossible that he's a
I
teenager.
love him.
But he's so lovely. He's so wonderful.
He's
He's a
amazing.
giant ball of
He's
Happiness.
breaking my
happiness.
heart. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just the marshmallow.
He's not breaking my heart at all. I think like this would be a good experience for him.
It will mature
Because
him more.
and of
That's
all
true.
people, it will not just mature him more. Of all people, he will actually learn something from this experience, and it's not going to embitter him. Like other characters might swear off falling in love because the first one didn't work off, but he's the kind of character who's like, I'm glad this happened to me, and then he'll move on and
Oh,
fall in
that's
love
true.
again.
I feel like if he had gone through what Woojin went through at this age, he definitely would have handled it better instead of becoming like this recluse that never talks to anybody.
Yeah, just isolating and kind of stagnating in one place.
Right.
But yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say. It had like it's not like it hadn't occurred. It's not like it hadn't occurred to me before that I'm basically a teenager disguised as a as a late 20s woman. But it's just that when this drama talks about it, that really resonates with me. This is true. This is so true. I am just pretending to be an adult.
Yeah, I screen capped
So,
that. I was like,
know,
yes, the
I haven't
drama
actually-
gets me.
I haven't actually seen that episode yet. But I remember an old lady, I think she was like 80 or 90, saying, I don't know if I read it or if I was talking to her, and she was like, I'm always gonna feel 19 on the inside. Like I've never felt older than 19. And like it really had an impact on me because she's like the wrinkled face and she's lived a whole life. It's just like, yeah, I still feel like I'm 19.
Yeah. And going back to what you guys were talking about finding like, so many things familiar about Korean culture to the culture that we have been brought up in. I think it was earlier this year that I watched Father is Strange, and Yuri's character, Byun Hyung, one of the reasons I loved her beyond everything else was because she it's not like she cowed down to her parents' diktats, but she respected them and their feelings, and that in her narrative their opinions mattered. Like when she would make decisions about her life, she wanted her parents to be not just involved but to remain a part of their life. One of the things that I find really dissociative about many TV shows and drama that I used to watch before Korean dramas was how people were just happy to have not happy, but they were like they would give in to the idea that the parents they brought us up, but now we can move on and have our adult lives where our parents might not be a part of that life. And look, my mom passed away when I was younger. I am very close to my father. In no view of my future can I ever imagine my father not being a part of my life. And I'm pretty sure if my mom had been alive, that would have also remained true. So in my head, it's completely ridiculous to think that there can be, like, no matter where I go in my future, my father, my parents would have always been a part of that life. So I like that Iuri is independent, she's opinionated. There is no way she would allow an unreasonable prejudice to ruin her life. But she also is stubborn enough to sit in front of her parents and tell them that, look, I'll postpone my decision until you guys are on board, but I'll wait for you. And I love that. And I've never seen that in dramas or movies outside Korean dramas. So
I agree with you 100%. That's so well said. Yeah.
And it's partly like there's what makes Korea quite distinct in its region as well is the Confucian values are much more strong in Korea than in any of the surrounding countries, if they have them in the same way at all. I might have botched this, but like I read up on it once. But part of the reason that their culture, part of the reason why it feels so familiar is because of the Confucian values, and which is not common to all of the other countries in the region. For example, Japan and stuff. It's not the same. It's not in the same way. Even though they still have, the whole filial piety and stuff like that, it's not quite the same. Like Korean culture upholds it in quite a different way.
yeah, and it's not like Korean dramas are immune to problems. There are plenty of problematic tropes.
Plenty.
Yeah,
There's a lot
with reference to the hierarchy that in some ways we love so much. There is also the very problematic workplace hierarchy.
Yeah.
How there's so many people have to like remain quiet in the face of injustice because they are in a junior position. There is a lot of abuse of power. There are those things as well. It's not like it's a perfect world, but if it was a perfect world, we wouldn't want to watch it. It's because we can dissect this world, see it for what it is, and also appreciate the many similarities to our own life and culture that Korean dramas hook us so much.
Yeah, it's so true.
I want to go back to a point that you made quite a bit earlier, P, which is when you were talking about the emotional quality that Korean dramas have. I think one of the big things that makes Korean dramas very different to English language dramas is that the majority of those drama writers are women, and they write shows in a completely different way. And that's why, for example, the shows that we have liked like in English language works is, often they've been the work of women.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. Even though the directors are usually men, but the writers are like 95% of the time women. And you definitely do. I almost get the sense, and I think this is getting slightly better in American TV in like the last couple of years, especially after This Is Us came out and it makes people cry in every episode, although I haven't watched it, but that's what I hear. It's like American TV was too cool to have emotions for a really long time. And it was like they were too, like even if something happened in the storyline where you would feel a lot of emotion, it would just cut out before you get to see that person's reaction to it. Like it was like embarrassing for the characters to show too much emotion on screen.
Or like emotions aren't interesting enough, they're not
Yeah,
story worthy.
exactly. Or they're like too overwrought or cliched, or it's not like high drama. It's not like prestige television. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not artistic, or it's not literary or whatever. But Korean dramas don't shy away from emotion. They very much revel in it. Like maybe sometimes
it's
a little
not even
bit
that
too
the
much.
emotion is like integral to the story.
Right.
Without the emotion, the story doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. The emotional journey is half of the plot, if not the entire plot.
And like the motivations and everything, they all come from these very inner feelings.
So true.
Like Revenge Mellow's my favorite.
Not my favorite, but I will give you that.
Oh, that reminds me, actually, is again, differences between watching English language stuff is that I'd never realized how much I love thrillers until K-drama, because with sort of English language stuff, they're too gritty, they're too violent. I often can't, like, I want the mystery and I don't want the violence, I don't want the gore, I don't want to have to, you know,
The
go
brutality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's precisely the word I was looking for. But with a K-drama, you get to have that story without having to subject yourself to, you know, the brutality of everything else. And like, I started off watching K-dramas in sort of the whole world of rom-com, but I've kind of like very like slowed down my rom-com watching to the extent that for like about 2.5 years I pretty much subsisted on thrillers. And it was very recently, like since I'm Not a Robot, I think, that I kind of rediscovered my rom-com appetite, or romance appetite at least,
You
not
know,
necessarily rom-com.
yeah, the interesting thing is as well, like I grew up watching, you know, rom-coms, like, you know, in the 90s we had all those Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, you know, like You've Got Mail and Sleepless in Seattle, all those. Yeah. And then that was kind of the height of the rom-com in Hollywood, and then they kind of just fell off. And nowadays you'll hear people saying, oh, I miss rom-coms, like they don't make rom-coms anymore. And I feel like I've upgraded my level to like an even better version of the rom-com and Korean dramas.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's better because instead of getting to that, you know, usually at the end of the movie, they'll finally confess that they like each other or they love each other or they'll kiss or they'll have some kind of a resolution to the will they, won't they. But in Korean dramas, they take you further. You know, a lot of times you get to explore the relationship dynamics. They meet each other's parents. They decide what, you know, they have to deal a lot of times with their socioeconomic status. So you get to explore all this other stuff that's bringing a life change because of who they fell in love with. But it's not necessarily about the romance. It's about putting their lives together and sharing their lives. And that's really interesting. But what you were saying about thrillers, I felt this a lot, although this isn't a thriller, but when I watched Just Between Lovers a few months ago, there is a romance in that, but it's so much more about like these two people who have experienced extreme trauma at a really young age. And I don't think I've ever seen a TV show or a movie or maybe not even a book explore the aftermath of that kind of trauma that you experience as a teenager and like how that would look like, you know, 10 years later, and how that would affect your life and your emotional life and like your daily, the little details of your day, you know, and your relationships and how you could heal from that and how long it takes and how different. Like I just really, really love that. And I think it's uniquely suited to the Korean drama format. It just does it so well.
Yeah.
That's more or less next on my list, except I have to sort of gird my emotional loins to watch it. I'm a bit
heavy.
scared.
Yeah, it's heavy, but it's heavy in a really fulfilling way. Yeah, but you need tissues for sure.
That's why I'm scared.
He is amazing. Namun-hee will make you cry. She's incredible.
Yeah, that was Namun-hee was in what's it called, isn't it? I Can Speak.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I love her. She's so cool.
So I'm still wondering what it is about Korean drama relationships that attracts me so much more than the English language media that I've watched all my life. And you know what? I think I have a hunch. My other loves in terms of genre kind of clues me in on this. Um, I really like supernatural stuff and sci-fi. A drama that immediately comes to mind is, for instance, Supernatural, the US drama, which is still going on. I think there's like 14 seasons on.
Oh my God, yeah.
And
That
one
was
of
so
the reasons
daunting.
it works so well, despite having like its own misses and hits, is that the sibling relationship, Sam and Dean Winchester, the ones in the middle of it all, the show focuses on their relationship more than the demon of the week that they're fighting. And what I've found about science fiction and fantasy is that the theme of the story is always like the best stories that I've always enjoyed were stories where the relationship between characters were given more emphasis than the drama of the day. The monsters that you're killing, or I don't know, the space invasion that you're stopping. It just, the relationships were given more value. And that's true for all the dramas that I have loved till now in Korean drama. For instance, weightlifting fairy Kim Bok-joo, that's a romance. That's basically a romance comedy. But that's not exactly how you would introduce that drama, would you? You would talk about Kim Bok-joo's arc from this girl who's like pretty confident about her own strengths, but sort of insecure about her attractiveness to the opposite sex, and her learning her own value, and also figuring out how just navigating her way through her first crush, figuring out her feelings towards her friends, and also everything else that works. It just, there is so much to say about that drama before you introduce the romance aspect. And that's probably true for almost all the dramas that I've loved. You're Beautiful, the very first drama that I watched, when I try to explain to people what it's about, I wouldn't start with Govinam's romance with Hwang Tae-kyung. It's always the other stuff first. Like there is this so yeah, this novice enters the music industry, and she's pretending to be a boy, and will she be found out? Won't she be found out? Now there is cohabitation and crazies. But my point is that, you know, there's always so much going on before you ever get to the romance. So I think that might actually be it, that there is more story in these dramas than you would usually find in the English language TV shows that we're usually used to watch. There's a paucity of story, you know, like it's, yeah, that's just how I see it. I'm sorry, I went on for too long.
No, it was really well said, and I agree. And I think what you said is really interesting, because the only American show that I've watched, like, I've watched 13 seasons of Law and Order SVU. I know.
Wow.
And it's a weird show to have watched that many seasons of, because like it's a procedural and it's about like the most brutal, like it's about like, I don't know if you're familiar with the premise, but it's basically about the sexual crimes unit of the
yeah, a friend of mine recently went on and on about the chief of that unit, who's a woman, and she's been like the one fixture in the drama. Is that right?
For the last like 6 seasons, there was another chief before, and he retired, and then this woman came. She's pretty awesome, but like her underlings call her sir and stuff. But for me, yes, the crimes are really brutal and horrific, but the team was so, and you know, like for me, it was, I loved it for the years when it was like, you know, Olivia and Elliot, who are the partners, and they're kind of like the center of the show. And like, I just really loved their partnership and the team. And then they had, you know, that such an interesting dynamic with everyone on the force. And it was just like a really emotional, like their connection as partners was almost, it was so close. It almost transcends like a romantic relationship. But then on the other hand, like you always kind of want them to be together because it's so like tense, and like there's so much tension, and like you want it, but it's almost better.
You actively ship them, but
exactly. Yeah. Because there's more tension in them not actually being together, but they're so magnetic together, and their emotional relation. Anyway, I wanted.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Olivia is the one my friend was talking about. She went on and on about how amazing this woman is, and that
Mariska Hargitay, yeah, is the actress.
Yeah,
she
would watch this so long as
My
Mariska, played this character.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's amazing, and she her character on there plays the character she plays she was a product of rape, basically. Like her mom was raped, and she decided to have the baby, and so that's what kind of drives her character, and that's why she decided to work for this part, this section of the police force. And so she kind of has this inner fire, but the actress herself has been instrumental in getting all these how they started DNA testing at a certain point, but there were so much DNA evidence backed up, and there's also so many rape kits that have never been tested. And she's been pushing to get those tested, because there wasn't enough funding or whatever, but there are so many people who could have been convicted if these kits were actually tested. And that's what so that activism has kind of spilled over into her own life, and she's just awesome.
That's anyway. Amazing.
I kind of went on a tangent, but I just wanted to say that I agree with your point about it being about so much more than just the ostensible premise or the plot that's, written up top of what the show is about.
I feel like the thing that I want to say is really pedestrian now, but I'm going to say it anyway.
No, go
ahead. When Paroma was talking about Supernatural a few minutes ago, and she was saying that, was it 13 seasons? Or something?
14 now. I think the 14th one is about to be announced.
Wow. But the reason that you keep on watching it is because it's about the relationship and not about the cases. And what comes to mind with that is Criminal Minds, which one of my sisters has watched all 10 million seasons of the American one. But also why it didn't translate well when they adapted it as a K-drama. And I spent a lot of time with the show, so its biggest failure, this show's number one failure, was that it didn't focus on the team, it focused on the cases. It was if it were about showcasing the crimes, then the show was a runaway success, but it didn't have any uniting factor between the episodes of the teamwork, the fact that there is a core team here and that they're the ones that you're with for the show. You weren't with them. You got about maximum 10, no, you didn't get 10 minutes of them per show. You got 5 minutes of them per episode. It had a really fixed formula of I can't remember it right now, but it was 40 minutes on the case, 10 minutes on the bridge between cases, because it would introduce the next case in the last 10 minutes, and 5 minutes of token team bonding. So you had a really brilliant cast. You had a great director. Well, it was a good director. But that cast was amazing, and they've been amazing in other things, but they were completely wasted in Criminal Minds' career.
Well, that's the secret to a really successful procedural, isn't it? It's not really about, the cases have to be, competently, they have to make sense and logical and interesting. Yeah,
but what really keeps you coming back week after week is the core team.
Right, and seeing their relationships slowly change as they work together, and seeing them figure out how to kind of match their skills and
because you become
that works, and and how to sort of work together daily.
And because you become emotionally invested in them as well.
You do.
And it is they're your fictional friends.
Right.
You want to check in with them every week to see how they're doing, and you support them and you cheer for them and you're sad for them when they're sad, and you want to have a bond with those people.
It's also something I think and it's something especially with crime shows where if you don't have that, then all you're watching is just a cataloging of humanity's worst impulses out there for you to see, and then what's the point? It's having those detectives or those profilers or those autopsy people. What is it called? Pathologists,
coroners,
whatever.
Examiners.
Coroners, right? The medical examiners. I can talk, I swear. It's seeing their reaction.
I can see you're a rom-com girl.
Ask me about anything to do with prosecutors. I know all the words. I know them in Korean too. But it's seeing their reactions to these extremely brutal crimes and how they are basically trying to reconcile the fact that they want to be good people and that they need to continue living in the world with the fact that these horrible things happen, and them trying to go after justice. Yeah.
Right.
That's
and how they
why you're
maintain
there.
their humanity in that.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah.
It might be worth mentioning, giving just one example of a drama that didn't do relationships very well and tried to focus so exclusively on romance that it kind of, and didn't even do that very well. It's probably, for me, it's Airs. I know a lot of people love that drama,
I enjoyed
but
it.
one of the reasons it
I'm
failed
sorry. Nobody liked
majorly.
that show.
No, come on, it did actually pretty well. Like, not with us, but
Oh, okay.
I
and
enjoyed
the
it.
thing
Okay.
is,
Oh,
Proud
really?
okay,
head.
yeah, you can enjoy it. But one of the reasons it's not exactly a very memorable drama,
Yeah, it's
even
not a
though it had such an amazing cast, is because they just failed when it comes to establishing relationships. Just think of the school kids. Like, now we know Park Hyung-sik, and yeah, I mean, that was great for him that he could start there. But I actually don't remember much of his role. I don't remember much of any of the
Wasn't he
secondary
in 9
characters.
before that?
Maybe. My point is, the entire story was basically about Kim Tan chasing, what was her name, Chaeyoung Sung, and
Cheon-sung,
how, Kim Woo Bin's character was all, I'll take her away from you. And it was just got so melodramatic, and there was no, like, they would not seize that bloody plot. They would not move on to one of the things that was actually enjoyable was Park Shin Hye's the lady playing Park Shin Hye's mom. I always forget her name. She's such an amazing actress.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
I can't
love
remember her
her.
name though.
Yeah.
I always know her name, except right
Wait,
now.
I remember Kim Mi Kyung. Kim, I think so. I think
You
it's
know, I always call her Bojin's Umma because I loved her so much in Telluride Island.
I call her.
yeah,
So
and,
good.
and her character with the mistress of the house, with Kim Tan's mother, with her relationship with that lady was so amazing. It was like, she doesn't speak, but she leaves notes, and she both cares about her mistress and kind of finds her, I don't know, like a spoiled child.
Yeah.
And she's also cognizant of her own status in the house. And it just, those two women, their dynamic was so well done. But of course, it was not explored. It went nowhere, just like most of the drama. It was just such a disappointment. But it was a disappointment because they failed to develop the relationships between these characters, to properly sketch out character arcs.
I'm gonna
And
put
yeah,
this out
so
there. Imino is
yeah.
well overrated.
Now
Way
you say
overrated.
that, man. But back when we were watching Fate,
No, even then.
No,
Okay,
I've
no,
never
not
been a
not
huge
counting those
to be
dramas, but
honest.
in Airs, Kim Woo-bin's character, who was a real bully and
I wanted him to
horrible.
win. That was
Yeah,
just so
you ended
weird.
up rooting for him, and you're like, this is
Yeah,
like
because
writing
he had a
fail.
backstory. You
He had
could actually
depth.
feel bad for him. Like,
Yeah.
you could understand why he was such a nasty piece of work. His father was a nasty piece of work. That's how he had grown up, the poor boy. Whereas Lee Min Ho was just, I mean, yeah, I
spoiled
suppose
brat.
I mean, he was too
Stalking
spoiled.
brat.
Yeah.
A bit over emo.
Yeah.
Too
That's what I say. I
and
didn't
his
enjoy the drama.
relationship with his older brother was given like little to no screen space, and yet that was supposed to influence so much of his character. It was just
I think all the things that you said, Paroma, are why I think Airs makes me so mad. Like,
Everyone
some
was
shows,
misused in that show.
yeah, some shows you're like, oh, this was mediocre, but whatever. It was like fluff, but I remember in the beginning, I was really so caught by the show because it was so interesting, and the characters had so much potential, and like the setup was so interesting for so many of the, like Kim Woo Bin's character, and like you said, the two moms and their dynamic, and then it just doesn't go anywhere, and you're like, well, you had 20 episodes and this incredible cat, like Kim Ji-won, and Park Shin-hye is pretty.
Yeah, when you look at those names now, you're like, wow, that was a good
Park
cast.
Hyung-sik, and even the
there
older
was
generation,
buzz about this drama for a year before it came out. People
and they had
were
the
like,
money.
expecting something.
It's just there's no excuse. Yeah,
and because it was Kim and Suk as well, isn't it?
Mm. I think that was during her lazy period where she wasn't trying.
She'd become complacent. Yeah. That was not a good time. But yeah.
I think that was the one after Secret Garden, right?
That was and then I think she did Gentleman's Dignity.
That's right,
Oh,
Gentleman's
was that
Dignity.
2011? Oh, okay.
And then
Yeah.
Heirs, and Gentleman's
And then she went
Dignity
on to
was
do
not
Descendants
great
of the Sun.
That
Right?
was
Like
pretty recent. That was like 15 or something, wasn't it? 16? 2016?
Descendants of the Sun, yeah, it was 16. It was same year as Goblin, I think,
17
like
was
beginning
Goblin,
of the
yeah.
year. And
Yeah, Goblin was 17.
So yeah, and every other drama that she's done is so very much character based.
Yeah, I think that we've basically established that she's best when she has a co-writer, like a second writer. Someone who complete like who
What does that
fills
say
her
about her?
deficiency.
Who holds her back?
Because she like there's some stuff she does really well, but then she falls short in other aspects, which does affect the drama overall. Like for example, we see what the flaws are and stuff like Airs and Secret Garden, but though those flaws were covered by the time she got to Descendants of the Sun and Goblin.
I'm really curious about who she co-wrote with on City Hall, because that is still to me her best drama, and it's so well written. Like I don't see hardly any holes in that show. Maybe I'm biased, but I really, really loved that show. I think it's her best written show. Except maybe Goblin, but I feel like in some ways it's better than Goblin in terms of writing.
Goblin was a little self-indulgent after
It
a
was,
certain
yeah.
Oh,
City
yeah,
Hall is much
definitely
tighter
was.
and more, yeah, it doesn't waste time the way that Goblin.
Maybe
Goblin
she had
really
less money for City Hall.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was an amazing story, and for that time, for 2009 when it came out, the romance was very interesting and nuanced and like mature, and it was just really, really good.
Would you say that Kim In-suk is like the J.K. Rowling of K-drama writers?
Well, J.K. Rowling's given one amazing series. This lady's done consistently better with a lot of other dramas. So
I guess. But then that you're talking about 7 books, so
I mean, if you're talking about one book
it's
a
the
year,
same world
it always
building.
makes a bajillion dollars. Then it kind of.
I think it's more important to focus on the fact that all the dramas that she's done, they are very distinct from each other.
yeah.
Whereas J.K. Rowling, when she stepped outside the world of Harry Potter, she hasn't exactly and of course, it's very difficult to mimic the success of that first series. That was just.
I also find it difficult to compare books and dramas, just because with a drama, there's so many other people working with you, and that really changes the quality of the.
What I meant is, do you think that she could basically name her price, or
I think she does at this point. She
call
totally
every
does.
shot, which
that's
is
true. In that
what
sense,
J.K. Rowling can do.
That's
what I was kind of asking.
Yeah, she definitely does that.
I mean, look at Mr. Sunshine. They got all the money for that. So
yeah. I'm still stuck on episode 4 of it though.
I never watched that.
It's at like episode 14 right now. Just
I'm not really interested in going back, to be honest.
I am interesting, but I am interested. But yeah, I guess I'm busy. I will go back to it when my Revenge Mellows finish.
Did you still have a question, or did you ask your question already?
Oh, it's a completely like not related. It's going right back to our opening question, the origin stories topic. So I wanted to ask you guys, what was the first drama that you watched live as it was airing?
Ooh, in keeping with our discussion about Kim In-suk, it was actually Secret Garden.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I used to like download the raws and watch them.
Oh yeah.
There was this girl who used to do basically like, I don't know if you would call them live recaps, but she would just sit there and like type out everything that happened and all the dialogue.
Yeah, they are live recaps. Yeah,
and it would come out a couple of hours after the episode. I don't know how she did it, but I would go and read that, and at that point I could only understand about half of what they were saying. So I very much enjoyed my watching experience of Secret Garden. It was very crowtastic.
Oh, what do you wish you had watched live, Anisa?
What do I wish I had watched live? That's a hard question. Why don't you, can you, Paroma, why don't you answer the first question? I'll think about that, because I don't know. I have to think about it.
Sure. I think the first drama that I live watched was Police Unit 38. Before
Really?
I, yeah,
That
before I
late?
joined, yeah, it was because I was recapping it with you on Drama.
Oh,
Before
yeah.
that, everything I'd watched had already finished, and I was just catching up to stuff. I hadn't done that whole thing about anticipating dramas and kind of sitting. I really
Oh.
hadn't. I had
So
just started
basically,
reading Drama Beans a few months like before I applied for the thing, and then I started writing for them, and then I was like, oh, there is this whole new world of waiting for a drama.
You
Yeah,
didn't
so
know
that
how good
was,
you had it until
in
you
it,
had it.
man.
Yeah.
and
Okay, I'm
I
gonna
was
answer.
still, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Finish.
Go on,
No,
Pete.
no, I'm done. Go on.
So I think I have two answers. One is a drama that I've actually finished watching, and one is one that I haven't. The one that I finished watching is actually The King Two Hearts, which there was such a massive like fandom experience around that.
Yeah.
And it was such an interesting show in the sense that like it kept changing. Like it kept surprising us as viewers. And like back then it was one of the first dramas to have, sort of a wider geopolitical scope, and it had this really creative premise with the royal family, and you had like, it was almost like an international thing, and then there's the whole part where he goes to North Korea, and then like their relationship is so different and how it develops and how it kind of transforms throughout the show. And so I feel like it would have been really fun to kind of and then there's the whole thing with the king and what happens to the king and what happens to the
Yeah.
princess. So like I feel like if I had been watching it with other people, and I started out watching it kind of on time, but then I was in school and so then I ended up like binge watching the latter half of it, or the latter 3/4. But I wish I had watched that along with everyone else, because I feel like the fandom excitement had kind of petered out by the time I finished. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk to somebody, and like
Yeah, isn't it
it's
always a
not the
trade-off?
same. Yeah.
It's
And
a
then,
trade-off between the like enjoying the fandom and getting the drama all at once, which Paroma saved herself from. I hate you.
Yeah, but
no, the other one is kind of short. It's a Healer, which I'm still stuck at episode
You
6.
didn't watch that live?
But I remember
what?
how much of a thing it was when it was airing, to the point where it
Yeah,
was like,
man.
I
It
mean,
was
we don't have to say anything. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I'm kind of sad that I missed that.
It was
I kind of-
that
I kind of
was
don't wanna watch
a
it by
time to
myself.
watch dramas.
Yeah, I
It
don't
was
know.
so exciting.
I think part of the reason why I'm stuck is like I kind of feel sad that I missed out on all of that excitement. And I'm just like, I don't know. And now like it's reached such high epic proportions in my mind because of how everyone raves at it that I'm afraid I'm going to be disappointed.
Did you watch Signal live?
Signal I watched in 3
No,
days.
you watched that quite recently.
I watched in 3 days at the end of the year when it aired, because I wanted to include it in my end of year review.
Yeah.
And I was a wreck when it finished. I was like a sobbing wreck.
Oh, I watched that one live as well. Oh my goodness.
Oh God, how did you do that?
Oh, it was yeah. It was one of the best. It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. Okay.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Same with Healer.
Oh,
Go on,
guys,
Kate.
I need to revise my answer. It wasn't Police Unit 38, though I remember that most clearly because it was excruciating that I had to wait for.
Man, it was.
But I think the first one that I live watched was Kill Me Hughie. And that was an experience, live watching. I had never watched anything like it before. And that was actually my first G-Sun drama. It was after Kill Me Hughie that I went back and watched Secret Love. And G-Sun kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, man.
Oh my God. That was such
blew everyone's mind. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, that was amazing. And the drama that I wished I had live watched and I could have, I'm such an idiot, I didn't, was Father is Strange. I would have loved to be part of the fandom when it was.
But you would have had to wait week to week.
I watched it pretty much live.
I kind of, no, I went insane and I watched this entire thing in, I think in like a 4-day period.
Yeah.
I watched 52 episodes. That was not healthy. It would have been a good thing for me to watch.
See, this is partly like live watching helps you pace yourself.
It does.
Exactly.
It does.
Exactly.
I think especially with family dramas, because they're so unbelievably long, it's ridiculous. And also just because of the way you get like a little bit of everyone's story. And then if you watch it live, you get to spend like 6 months with this family. And so by the end, you're like crying because you're going to miss them, and you're crying because you're so happy to see them get their like happy endings. Like the payoff is so much better, I think, if you watch it kind of either sort of live or, you know, you start like halfway through the drama.
You don't know at the outset at that point that it's worth watching.
This is why I wait until half of it is over and I hear people telling me it's good, and then I get to binge watch the first half.
Not a guarantee that it's going to end.
No, that's true. But it's a little bit safer.
Yeah, I suppose family dramas are a lot safer. They're not like the miniseries types with the thingies.
Yeah. I think with a family drama, if the first 30 episodes are good, it's probably going to be good all the way through to the end, unless it gets extended, in which the last few episodes will just be like slow. But it's more reliable than, say, you know, a time travel drama where you don't know if the ending is going to make sense or not.
I've watched all of them.
Or a ghost drama where like you don't know if the ghost is going to get reincarnated or just die, or like something else is going to happen that doesn't make any sense.
Or the guy falls in love with the ghost and the ghost goes and the girl remains, and it's like, you did not sell me this drama properly.
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah, that
Oh, my ghostess, for anyone who's interested.
I am still convinced he was in love with a ghost.
It was completely. I hate the ending of that show.
You know, I got to like episode 8. Spoiler warning, guys. But I got to episode 8 and I was like, this is going somewhere that I'm not really going to be happy with, and I just stopped watching it.
The girl had no personality.
Yeah.
I believed and I was betrayed.
On that note.
Oh, but I haven't said mine yet.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Look at you trying to leave me out. You really do want me to stop talking, don't you?
No,
not gonna happen, guys. We can wrap up. I'm gonna be fast. So my first live watch was School 2013. And the one I wish I'd live watched is City Hunter. After I went through Healer, I really understood what I missed with City Hunter.
I feel like I watched that live and it was enjoyable.
But like Healer, City Hunter had like a very special place in my heart, and Healer just like toppled it from its pedestal.
Yeah.
So action thrillers are like my home ground. They are everything for me. They're everything to me, which is an obscure quote from a lyric from a song from the soundtrack of Healer. Let's pretend I didn't say that.
I didn't get that reference, but you know, I wouldn't.
Oh yeah, that's it. I'm done.
So that's how we got into K-dramas. That's why we stick with K-dramas, and that's why we are gonna keep watching K-dramas
and keep talking about them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bye,
we'll
guys.
never stop talking, guys. Bye.
Bye.